early July, 2023 had become the deadliest year on record for Palestinians living in the West Bank, with 153 people killed by Israeli forces. But it's not just civilians that Israel's security forces attack. Published today on NovaraMedia.com is the news that Palestinian paramedics and ambulance drivers are increasingly being targeted as they try to assist the injured. The footage you're going to see now is from an attack that took place in June. This ambulance was set alight by Israeli settlers as they rampaged through Palestinian towns, injuring 34 people. According to the Palestine Red Crescent Society, Israeli soldiers have been physically assaulting medics and targeting their ambulances with live ammunition, rubber bullets, and tear gas canisters. In total, there have been 193 incidents involving medical staff and vehicles in 2023 so far. Now, that is a 310% increase compared with the same period last year. The situation has become so bad that last month, Medical Aid for Palestinians furnished medical workers in the region with bulletproof vests and helmets. That's after body armour became the most requested resource by those working on the ground. But MAP reports that last month, Israeli forces stopped ambulance workers, forcing them to remove their clothes before confiscating their bulletproof vests. Sometimes Israeli forces have reportedly blocked ambulances from reaching the injured. Walid Abdul Al-Haya is a 48-year-old paramedic. He told Novara Media of sniper fire being used to drive him away from a casualty. That victim continued to bleed until they died. On other occasions, Walid was prevented from rescuing injured children by Israeli forces. So this is what he said about how these incidents have affected him. We always have a feeling of guilt that perhaps I should have tried more to reach the injured person, although it is not my fault. I imagine that perhaps this injured person that I could not reach could be my son or brother or one of my relatives. 38-year-old medical worker Hamid Soblo Ahmed has had similar experiences, telling Novara Media this. Sometimes I see injured people in desperate need for our help, which Israeli forces prevent us from providing. These people are on my mind, and I think about them constantly, so much so that some nights I can't sleep. Our inability to help them and the feeling of failure to provide help weighs on me. When I leave the house, I often feel I'm saying goodbye to my children and family, and I do not know whether I will return safely or not, so my view of them is a farewell look. As ambulance workers come under attack, the injuries the Israeli forces are inflicting on Palestinians are becoming increasingly severe. Koala Juma has worked as an ambulance officer in Palestine for 17 years. Over that time, there's been a change to the kinds of injuries she encounters. Israeli forces used to shoot Palestinians in their legs, but now intentionally shoot them in their neck or chest, which involves a more serious threat to their lives. Can't believe that we're sitting here talking about the fact that the upscaling of injury is they're not just shooting us in our legs anymore, they're shooting us in our neck. Medical workers in Palestine are seeing increasingly violent injuries, as well as a risk to their own lives as they come under targeted attack. And to tackle the risk of emergency health workers not being able to reach the injured, MAP has been training people in the community to provide basic first aid. They're also helping the ambulance workers to cope with the increased violence. Aside from protective equipment, MAP have been providing psychological support and self-care workshops to these courageous lifesavers to regulate this enormous stress caused by a brutal occupation. Now, this escalation of attacks on paramedics who are providing aid is in keeping with the new Israeli government's increased aggression. Rivka, what is the logical endpoint here?
It's not an exaggeration to say that in the case of this Israeli government in particular, the endpoint is genocide. We have the Israeli finance minister and one of the most influential members of the current government, Bezalel Smotrich, saying, earlier in the year in March, that the entire village of Hawara needs to be wiped out. This is not the language of ethnic cleansing. This isn't even the language of apartheid. The entire village of Hawara needs to be wiped out. This is the language of genocide. A few days ago, a former commander in the IDF, one of numerous former military commanders from Israel to say similar things, a guy called Amiram Levin, he compared what's happening in the West Bank in particular to the legislation of Nazi Germany on the eve of the Second World War and the run up to the Holocaust. It's not an exaggeration to say that the Israeli government's ultimate aim is to eliminate, on a mass scale, Palestinian life.
If you want to read more about this topic, you can do so by heading to novaramedia.com. The link to that article by Daisy Schofield will be in the description box below.